Welcome to the Dark Entry, your gateway to the realms of mystery and suspense. Tonight, we have a gripping tale that will send shivers down your spine and leave you questioning the veil between reality and the supernatural. In a quiet town nestled amidst a sprawling forest, whispers echo of a secret lurking within the depths of its ancient wood. A private investigator, driven by curiosity and a hunger for the truth, finds themselves entangled in a web of enigmatic danger. Their path leads them to a forbidden truth cloaked in darkness and steeped in sinister rituals. The Church in the Woods, by Reddit user House261 Turner Lane, holds the key to unlocking a disturbing truth. One that challenges everything we thought we knew about faith, humanity, and the unseen forces that shape our world. As the investigator delves deeper into the heart of this chilling enigma, he unearths dark secrets that should have remained buried, stirring forces that should have never been awakened. But tread carefully, dear listeners, for the path before us is a treacherous and full of unexpected twists and turns. Brace yourselves for heart-pounding revelations and a descent into a world where the line between sanity and madness blurs. Tonight, we embark on a journey that will test the limits of our courage and leave us questioning the very fabric of our existence. So, lock your doors, dim the lights, and prepare to be captivated by the enigmatic tale of the Church in the Woods. Join us as we venture into the depths of the Dark Entry, where the supernatural and the mundane collide in a symphony of fear and fascination. As always, the link to this story is in the description below, so be sure to go over and give this author the love they deserve. So with that, sit back, settle in, relax, and get ready to descend into darkness. My name is Mark. I'm a detective. Not like on the force or anything, a private eye. Like in the movies. It's kind of the family business. My grandfather was one, and my dad and I grew up in that world, and it was only natural that I go into it too. It's not an exciting job, but as you would think if you go by Hollywood, it's mostly sitting in your car for 10 hours at a time, waiting to take pictures of cheating spouses to show the spouse who is paying you to prove that they're being cheated on. It's kind of a bummer sometimes, but people get married, they get cheated on, they get divorced. So often, kids are caught up in the middle of it all. Now and then, something crazy comes your way, though, or something exciting. I want to tell you guys about one of the crazy ones, well, the craziest. It happened a few years ago, and sometimes I still can't convince myself it was real. I'm not religious, and I don't believe in the supernatural. At least I didn't until Benson Street. Now, I'm not so sure. A woman got a hold of me in August of 2020. She had lost contact with her sister. She came into my office and spun a pretty crazy story. Her sister lived in a small town in Michigan called Franklin's Green. My client was named Shelley. She was 62 and her mother was a little younger. They were close and spoke almost every day, but for the last month, her sister hadn't answered her calls. And then Shelley did a digging and came across a couple of new stories that were a little hard to believe. They said that everyone who lived in Benson Street had gone missing. There were 8 houses on the dead-end street, and every person who lived in them had seemingly vanished into thin air. I mean, I've read the story myself. After Shelley left, I did my own digging, and she was right. It was crazy, and I was a little surprised the story hadn't gotten more attention. I called Shelley back that night and told her I would take her case. I didn't usually travel that far for a job, but the next morning I packed up a few things and left my office in Cincinnati. Hours later, I arrived in Franklin's Green. There was a little crappy motel, and I checked in and then headed right for Benson Street. was smack dab in the middle of a sleepy neighborhood, lower middle class, mostly ranch-style homes. The entrance to Benson Street was completely roped off with yellow police tape, stretched between a telephone pole and a stop sign. I parked nearby and decided to canvass the surrounding streets. Knocked on doors, stopped and chatted with an old man who was out watering his garden. Stuff like that. No one had much for me. Everyone on Benson Street had simply been there one day and gone the next. No one knew why. The people I spoke with were happy to share their theories with me. The street was full of drug addicts who had all gotten high and wandered off. There was a gas leak that killed everyone in their sleep, and the gas company removed the bodies to avoid suspicion. Nothing, I was told, seemed very likely. At the time, I had spoken with a number of people. The sun had gone down, and I debated on going back to the motel room and start the next morning, but I thought I would at least check out Shelley's sister's house. I grabbed my flashlight from my duffel bag and in my trunk and ducked under the yellow tape. Shelley's sister was named Mary, and she had been married to a guy named Tom for nearly 40 years. They had 2 children who were grown and lived out of state. Shelley had told me they were worried about their mother and father as well as hadn't been able to reach them, nor had Mary and Tom reached out to them. Mary's house was third on the left, and I did a slow circle around it, shining my flashlight in the dark. I'm not sure what clues I was looking for, but there was none to find. One thing that took me by surprise a bit was just how big the houses on Benson Street were compared to the rest of the neighborhood. I made my way back around to the front of the house and went up onto the porch. I tried the doorknob and was surprised to find the house unlocked. I was sure the cops had been through all the houses on the street, but as I stepped inside, I saw no evidence of this. I worked through the ground floor slowly, resisting the urge to turn on lights on as I went. I didn't want to draw any attention myself, and one of these houses with lights burning in every window would be very noticeable to anyone who drove by Benson Street. The home was eerie. It was as if Mary and her husband had simply vanished. There was a half-empty can of Coke in the kitchen island and dishes that needed to be washed in the sink. A cloud of flies buzzing here and there, eating the food residue that had been waiting to be cleaned away. A door in the kitchen opened up to a set of stairs leading down. I decided to save the basement for last, went upstairs instead. I worked slowly, just as I had been on the ground floor. There were 4 bedrooms. The master bedroom was the married couple, obviously, and another of the bedrooms was a guest room. The third room had been converted into an office. The laptop on the desk there was dead. I found the charger and plugged it in and went into the 4th bedroom, which had a treadmill and an exercise bike. I had saved the master bedroom for last and worked my way through the dresser there, finding nothing but clothes. The closet was another story, though. There was a shoebox up on the shelf, hidden underneath folded bed sheets and a hand-stitched quilt. I pulled the box down and opened it, surprised to find a knife. The knife was ornate, the blade curved and the hilt made of bone and wrapped in leather. Etchings had been carved into the bone, and I unwrapped the leather to better see. I can only describe the etchings as strange runes, almost like an alphabet. They were very letter-like, but damned if I knew what they meant. I took pictures of the knife and then replaced it in the box and hid it once again. All that was left was the basement, and I was surprised to realize I had been putting it off, even dreading going down there. I had no other choice, though, and headed down into the kitchen with the heavy steps, and then down once more. I swept my light across the open basement. It was unfinished. The walls cement as well as the floor. Small, frosted windows sat near the beams of the floor above. The basement had been used for storage. I found cardboard boxes filled with Christmas decorations, and a small wooden chest filled with important papers like birth certificates and old pay stubs. A Above me, a creak. I froze and turned off my light. A thud, another creak. Someone was walking on the ground floor. I wrestled with what I had to do, and I can feel my heart thumping wildly in my chest. Did I call out? Admit that I was trespassing? Do I go upstairs and try to sneak out? Do I stay hoping they don't come down? I crept slowly to the foot of the wooden stairs that I had come down. I had left the basement door open and cursed myself for my stupidity. I listened to the footsteps above me. Sweat stung my eyes and I wiped it away. The footsteps came into the kitchen. I moved away from the bottom of the stairs. I looked for a place to hide and wedged myself in behind a stack of plastic totes along the wall just as I heard footsteps on the stairs. I held my breath. I peeked out, but it was so dark down there. I couldn't see much more than a dark shape. It paused at the foot of the stairs and then turned and went back up. I waited for what felt like an eternity, but it was probably only 10 minutes. I didn't hear any movement upstairs. I left my hiding spot and went to the foot of the stairs. I took them slowly, exited into the kitchen, and then shut the door as quietly as I could. I paused there for a long time, listening. If anyone else was still in the house, they weren't moving. I hurried to the front door and pulled it open. I stepped onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind me. Rushed off the porch and into the middle of the street. I turned and looked at the house and felt sheer terror, and my eyes swept up to one of the windows that looked out onto the street from the master bedroom. Someone was standing there, staring right at me. The same dark shadow I had seen in the basement. I turned and ran down the street to my car. I rushed to the motel and went inside my room. The locked door wasn't heavy enough, though. I pushed the heavy circular table that served as an eating area in the small room in front of the door, too. Found myself exhausted. I fell into a restless sleep. I dreamed of a dark shape and that a curved blade. When I woke up the next morning, I thought about going to the local police and telling them who I was, who hired me. But it was in my experience most cops don't take kindly to private detectives, and I was afraid they'd keep me from Benson Street. So I showered, dressed, and headed back over there. Felt a little bit more comfortable in the daytime. I went back into Mary's house and looked for evidence of someone else having been there, but I found nothing. When I went back outside and stared at the end of the street and tried the front doors as I moved up and around the cul-de-sac, and went up to the other side. A lot of the doors were locked, but 2 were unlocked. The houses I could enter were a lot like the ones I had been in overnight before. Seemed as if whoever had lived there had just vanished or up and left without taking anything. In the first house, I found a set of luggage, and it didn't seem like the overstuffed closet and drawers full of clothes had been touched. No one had packed for a trip. In the other house, I found something rather alarming. It sat right out in the bedroom table in the master bedroom. A knife exactly like the one I had found in Mary's home, hidden away. Same bone handle and the same runes carved into it. Same curved blade, sharp as it can be. I went back to the middle unlocked house and began to search. It took me a couple of hours, but then I found it stashed away in a floor vent. An identical knife. I left quickly and went to my car. I found a little diner and stopped for lunch, and sat at the table with my phone searching online for any sort of information I could on the knives. I searched for news about cults in the area and came up with nothing. I had taken pictures of the knives and tried to find anything about the runes, but ran into a dead end there as well. After lunch, I went back to Benson Street and stood on the sidewalk. I was fairly sure that if I broke into the locked homes, I would find knives there as well. I walked slowly past the house and then paused at the end of the street. Past the end of the road were woods, mostly evergreens. A dirty little path cut from the end of the street and through the lawns of the 2 homes in front of me and to the trees. I started down the path. It was well worn and continued well into the woods, curved around trees and overgrown plants. I walked along it for nearly half an hour before I saw it. The church was old and made of wood, squat and slanted. A spire went up over the front double doors, a strange symbol that resembled an inverted cross that made of what looked like iron nailed to the front. I went to the building and tried the doors. They opened freely. Surely the police hadn't missed this strange building. Inside were a few rows of pews and an altar at the back of a large open room. A large leather-bound book with yellowing pages that curled in the corner sat open at the altar next to a silver cup stained red inside. I couldn't read the book. It was written in the same strange runes that were etched in the handles of the knives. I took pictures of a few pages and hurried back outside. Standing in the church, I felt a growing sense of unease, almost like I was being watched. I thought of the shadowy figure that had been watching me from the outside of Mary's home and shivered. I went back to Benson Street and rushed to my car. I drove to the safety of my motel, went in and locked the door, barring it once more with a table. I called Shelley and told her about the church. She had never heard her sister or brother-in-law speak of it. I sat on the end of the bed and scrolled through the internet, trying to find the strange inverted cross sigil I had seen on the front of the church. It took hours, but eventually I found it. I clicked on the picture and it took me to an amateur site that seemed to be all about various demons and hellspawn. It was a symbol of something called the Nameless One. It was said he would bring his followers great wealth and power in exchange for sacrifices. I thought immediately of how the homes on Benson Street were much bigger than those nearby. I set my phone aside and shivered. The whole thing was freaking me out. I don't scare easily, but that job I had taken was proving to be a strange one, and I couldn't get over the feeling that I was messing with something I shouldn't. When the sun went down, I drove to the local bar, a place called Mel's. It was busy, and I took a stool at the bar and had a beer. Over the course of a few hours, I spoke to a few townspeople about Benson Street. I was truthful with who I was and what I was doing. A lot of people clammed up when I brought up the street. I didn't ask about the church or the symbol I had seen, but I did ask about the houses and how they seemed to be so much more expensive. One old guy gave me something. Everyone on that street was a weirdo, he told me, and all knew it. Whoever they were, it isn't good. Another patron of the bar brought up how people in the area had been going missing regularly for the last few years. Drifters and homeless folk. No one important. No one who had got the police involved very much. Back at my motel, I called Mary and Tom's oldest. I asked if they had grown up in the house on Benson Street, and he told me no. His parents had bought it a few years ago after Tom had retired a few years early. I thanked him and hung up. I was asleep when a thump at my door woke me. I went to the peephole and peered out, but could see no one. Fear gripped my heart with its icy hand. I went to the window and carefully pulled the blind back to the edge and looked out into the parking lot. A line of 4 people stood there, right in the middle of the black pavement, staring right at my room. It was dark, and I couldn't make out who they were, man or woman. I couldn't tell. I had no idea of their age. They wore dark clothing, robes of some sort, and with hoods pulled up. As I watched, they turned as a group and walked out of the lot and across the street. I watched them until they faded into darkness. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I went back to Benson Street. I was drawn to it, or more specifically, to the church in the woods. I hurried down the path and entered that strange building again. Someone else had been there. The book and cup had been on the altar were gone. I did a more thorough search of the building and found a small trap door just behind the altar. I lifted up the hatch and shone my flashlight into the hole. A rickety wooden ladder led me down 10 or so feet to a dirt floor. I took a deep breath and started to climb down. There was a tunnel curving away and to the right when I got off the ladder and turned around. I kept my light on and crept forward. It twisted this way, and it was until I opened up into a larger chamber and I found the people who had lived on Benson Street. They all lay dead on the floor, nude with their arms crossed over their chest. I needed to tell the police. I turned and came face to face with a man in a hooded robe. "Intruder!" he screamed at me, and I pushed past him and ran. I knew he was chasing me. I could hear his heavy footsteps right behind me. A chill blew through the tunnel as I ran. Voices burst forth from nowhere, speaking a language I couldn't understand, and I got to the ladder and began to climb. I got to the top and rolled out of the hole and turned and used my foot to slam the door shut. There was no way to latch it. I stood and turned and shocked to find 100 or more candles had been placed throughout the church, all burning. So too were more robed figures. One came at me as the trap door behind me burst open. My original pursuer came through. I tussled with the new robed figure. He wrapped his arms around me, but I shoved him off into the altar. The candles there shook and then fell. A musty carpet that led from the altar to the front door lit immediately. Soon the room was alive with flames. The robed figures howled, and I was forgotten as they attempted to put the fire out. I ran for the door and burst through it and into the woods. It was still morning. The sun hung low on the sky, like cutting off of the many trees. I turned and looked at the church. It was burning. No one came after me. I turned and ran for Benson Street. I didn't stop running until I made it to my car. I drove to the motel and checked out and packed my things. I didn't call the police until an hour away from the town. I told them what I had found and hung up before they could start asking me questions. Then I called Shelley and told her everything I had found. The knives, the church, the robed figures. I could tell she didn't believe me, and she started to cry and curse me out for not giving her something real. I understood, though. I hardly believed the words coming out of my own mouth. In the end, I didn't speak with Shelley again. I didn't go after her for the unpaid balance she owed me. A week or so later, at home, I searched the internet for any sort of news story about the church behind Benson Street, but only found one little article that had been written in the local paper about a fire in the woods there. It didn't mention the church. In the 3 years since, I've seen robed figures, a handful of them sometimes. Sometimes I don't trust my own eyes and wonder if I'm hallucinating. I don't think I am. I think the followers of the Nameless One are keeping an eye on me. They never approach me. They never threaten me. But they are there. They are watching. As we conclude this bone-chilling journey through the church in the woods, we hope you have felt the goosebumps rise on your skin and experienced the thrill of unraveling a captivating mystery. The Dark Entry is grateful to have shared this gripping tale with you, delving into the depths of the unknown and blurring the boundaries of reality. Remember, dear listeners, that the shadows hold secrets untold, and the veil between the seen and unseen is often thinner than we realize. The church in the woods have left its mark, a haunting reminder that darkness can reside even in the most serene corners of the world. I extend our deepest gratitude to Reddit user House261 Turner Lane for crafting this mesmerizing tale that has left us all on the edge of our seats. If you dare to explore more of their work, be sure to visit the link in the description below. If you enjoyed tonight's narration and want to hear more, be sure to like and subscribe and open all notifications as to never miss a tale, and join us again here on The Dark Entry, where we will continue to unearth spine-chilling stories that test the limits of our imagination. Stay curious, stay courageous, and always be prepared for the unexpected. Thank you for joining me, and until next time, may your nights be filled with thrilling tales and your dreams be free from the terrors that lurk in the darkness. Good night, sleep tight, and I'll keep the light on for you and the tales coming.